Hey, good morning. Wow, that was pretty weak. I work in kids normally, so good morning. Great. Hey, can we give it up to worship, man? What an incredible worship morning there. I went I went to the Braves game yesterday, and I realized I couldn't cheer. I would have no voice. So imagine trying to go to a Braves game and not cheering. It's very hard. And I just think lost my voice worshiping this morning with it. So anyways, great morning. My name is Brandon Christensen. I'm one of the elders here at SouthCrest Church. My family and I have been here almost 4 years. So married next month will be 25 years to my wife, Shanna. So crazy time going there. My older daughter is 21 to be a senior at Samford University. And my younger daughter, Hallie, is 18, headed to Jacksonville State University. So we've got kind of a different season coming up here for us. But that's a little bit about ourselves. Well, hey, two quick things before we get going. First off, I realized last time I preached that I shared a little bit of my sinful nature in my competitive sports. Well, I realized when you share that in front of your church, you now have 500 accountability partners. So every week, hey, how's that soccer thing going? It's going. I'm working on it. Still kind of competitive with that. So, and the second thing I want to acknowledge is last week we had a big announcement. So if you weren't here, if you haven't seen the email or social media, you were in the middle of a boat in the ocean all last week. We announced Matt McFadden as the next senior pastor of SouthCrest Church. Yeah, give him. Woo! Great time. Really excited about Matt there. So if you want to check out the what we did, we prayed for him. We got the family, got to hear from him, talked about our process a little bit, but exciting times with it. We also realized that if we just put an announcement for July 4th Sunday every weekend, maybe people will show up. People will show up with it. So anyways, great time there. We're going to have a big celebration coming up in August, so stay tuned for that. But excited about Matt leading us into this next phase. Well, let's pray, and then we'll get started. Hey, dear Jesus, I thank you for today. I thank you that we get the body to gather as a body, as Ben just said. God, I thank you who you are. God, I thank you that the opportunities you can just show us over and over again, your faithfulness to us, even in the midst of chaos, even in the midst of storm, God, that you have so much for us. I pray that our hearts and minds would be fully open today to what you're saying. God, I pray that my words would be your words, and all God's people said, amen. Well, a couple years ago, I got to do something that most men in this room, probably some of you might have done this, and there's probably some ladies that would love to do. I got to drive a Lamborghini sports car on a racetrack. I've got a picture for those of you who don't believe me. So here's a picture of me in front of the Lamborghini. So this is on the track up in North Georgia. It's basically a replica Formula One track. So it has a lot of curves and some straightaways and then one long straightaway. Well, I've driven some sports cars before, Corvettes, Mustangs, BMWs, and all that stuff there. This was a different ball game. And if you know me, you know I like to do everything fast. I talk fast, I drive fast, I go fast. There is only one gear I have, and it's fast. So a chance to get to drive a car like this was truly incredible. And it's a 3-lap experience that you get. 3 laps. Well, when you get there, I was with a couple friends there, they don't just hand the keys to Lamborghini and say, go have a fun time. You get a guide in the car. They want to trust their couple $100,000 investment. So you have a guide that sits with you that helps guide you through the whole time. So we get the helmet on. Man, I'm excited, and I realize the power of this machine. I understand when I watch all those videos of people wrecking their Lamborghini in the first week. Yeah, I get it, right? So we get on the first lap, and he's telling me things that's counter to my driving experience. He's like waiting to tell me to brake, and I'm like, yeah, no way, I'm braking faster. He's telling me to accelerate quickly out of turns where I'm like, I don't know if I can trust the car. So my first lap, it's okay. But I'm only kind of listening to him a little bit. I'm really just kind of listening to me and my driving experience. Well, I go into the second lap, and I'm like, man, maybe I should start listening to this guy that's driven this track thousands of times. So I start to listen a little bit more, but it's still, I'm getting better, but I'm still kind of holding on. Well, I got 1 lap left. And see, I want to be the fastest in my group. I want to hit on that straightaway the fastest time. So I realized that maybe I should listen to this guy. Maybe I should take what he's saying. So I tune my brain out, and all I do is listen to what he says. I didn't do anything other than what he exactly said. Wait to brake. I broke until he told me. He said, hit the accelerator. I immediately hit the accelerator. He said to follow this groove or this line in the track. I follow that groove and that line in the track to a T. So we go on the final turn to that straightaway, and I'm like, here we go. I'm going to nail this straightaway. I hit it, and I go as fast as I can. I think I'm 140, 150. It was about 110. But in my mind, I felt like we were going a lot fast. I told him his speedometer was not correct. Anyways, but it was incredible. We go into the final turn. We brake quickly. We go in there, and we go in. And you can imagine I am on cloud 9 right now. I hop out of that car. I'm high-fiving my buddies like, I took you all down. You're not going to touch my D. I told him it was 130, by the way. I didn't tell him it was 110. But it was an incredible experience. But see, here's the thing. Only when I fully embraced, I fully listened, and I fully followed did I get the best experience. Only when I fully embraced, when I fully listened, and when I fully followed my guide, did I get that incredible lap 3 experience. Well, what about you in life? Who is your guide in life? Who is that person that's going to help you through the ups? It's going to help you through the downs. That's going to give you that lap 3 experience that you want. Well, my hope today is by the end of the day today that I make a case, and John ultimately makes the case, that Jesus is our guide. That Jesus is the only answer to be there in the storms, in the chaos, to be in the ups, to give you that lap 3 experience. Well, we've been in a series called So You May Believe, looking at the 7 miracles that John talks that Jesus did in the book of John. And today we're going to be on the 5th miracle, Jesus walking on water. So if you got your Bibles with you, your smartphones, whatever, open up to John 6:16 to 21. And while you guys do that, I'm going to give you a quick recap of the 4 other miracles we've covered so far. Well, the first one was Jesus turned water into wine. And what we learned about Jesus is the Word of God. He established the new covenant. The second week, we looked at the healing of the official son, and that Jesus wants to take us at his word. Words are as powerful as his touch. The third week, we looked at the healing of the blind man at the pool of Bethesda. Jesus had compassion on the broken, and so should we. And last week, Bennett did an awesome job looking at feeding the 5,000. And he said, Jesus is the bread. Jesus came to be the bread, not to give bread. Well, that leads us today to where we're at in John 6:16 through 21, where Jesus walks on water. Now, you may be wondering what's going on, because Bennett covered the first 15 verses of chapter 6, and he kind of referred to the last part of chapter 6. And we kind of have this little bit of alco here. Most people probably said I should have been diagnosed with ADD, ADHD when I was younger, and we often have these tangents we call squirrels. So you're wondering, did John go on a squirrel here, or was it impactful? I believe it was not a squirrel. It was well in tune of what his master plan was. So let's open our Bibles, John 6:16 through 21, and we'll read here. And it's also going to be on the screens. When evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into the boat, and started across the sea to Capernaum. It was now dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The sea became rough because a strong wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were frightened. But he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Then they were glad to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land to which they were going. So we see this also in 2 other Gospels. Bennett talked about the feeding of the 5,000 was in all 4 Gospels. We see this also in Matthew and Mark. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this or seen this. This is called the Harmony of the Gospels. Highly recommend it. Great read. It harmonizes all the Gospels together in their chronological order. So you can read them kind of in parallel with it in their chronological order. And what we get here is Matthew and Mark actually give us a little bit more details. So we get different perspectives with this on what's going on. So we're going to read Mark as well real quick, because this, again, gives us a few more details. It'll be on the screen as well, too. So this is Mark 6:47 through 52. We also see this in Matthew 14:24 through 33. So Mark says this, "And when the evening came, the boat was out on the sea, and he was alone on land." That's referring to Jesus, because Jesus had stayed behind and was praying in the mountain. "And he saw that they were making headway painfully, for the wind was against them. And about the 4th watch of night, he came to them, walking on the sea. He meant to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost and cried out, for they all saw him and were terrified. But immediately he spoke to them and said, 'Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid.' And he got into the boat with them, and the wind ceased, and they were utterly astounded, for they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened." So you see, we get a few more details that Mark fills in for us that we're going to reference back and forth as we go through John today. Well, I want to give you guys a little bit of background real quick as we dive into our passage, because I think this helps give you guys some ideas. So we got to remember where they started. So remember, they were feeding the 5,000, and they were in what's called Bethsaida, and Bethsaida Julia. So it's important to know that. And it's on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee, okay? The eastern side, which tends to be referred to as the Gentile area or the Decapolis area. And Capernaum on the other side was on the west side, where the Jews and the Israelites would hang out with it. So it wasn't like they were going down a coast and it was a quick hop. It was going over. The Sea of Galilee today is 7 miles wide and 13 miles long. Now, the question is where were they going? John 6:16 says, disciples got into a boat to Capernaum. Well, here is my unashamed plug I'm only getting 10% for Matt to go on the Israel study tour. I had a chance years ago in seminary to go on a 3-week study tour. And here's a picture of the boat that we got to cross over in the Sea of Galilee. So if you go, you hopefully can cross in a boat with it here. But it's similar to what the disciples would have been on. They've uncovered some, going back to the time of the disciples, what the boats would look like. And so an incredible opportunity to go over, cross over in the Sea of Galilee. Well, John tells us that they were headed to Capernaum. But Mark says immediately Jesus made his disciples get in the boat and go ahead of him to Bethsaida while he dismissed the crowd. So we've got some confusion here. John says they're going to Capernaum. Jesus puts them to Bethsaida. They're in Bethsaida, so what's going on? Well, 2 quick things to fix this. First off, there were 2 Bethsaidas. There were Bethsaida Julius, and there were Bethsaida down near Capernaum, a small town with it. It's kind of like we have Gainesville, Georgia, and we have that city down in Florida that I will not name because it's my arch enemy as a Seminole fan down there. So same city name, but 2 different states. Exactly what we have here. Same city name, 2 different locations. The second piece is when I travel a good bit there, and people say, where are you from? I start with Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta. Great, we're in Atlanta. Noonan, where's that? You know Peachtree City? Oh yeah, the golf cart community. Okay, well there you go. That's kind of where the general vicinity of where I'm at. Now I'm not lying, telling people that I'm in Atlanta area, that I live in the Noonan Peachtree City area. My wife works in Peachtree City. We live in Noonan. I also work in Tyrone some. It's a general idea here. So John's saying, hey, we're headed up to Capernaum. Jesus said, take them to Bethsaida. They might have stopped in Bethsaida first and went to Capernaum. And John's just like, hey, we're going to meet up in Capernaum. So when people sit there and say the Bible contradicts itself, it just takes a little bit looking in. It doesn't contradict itself. It's different viewpoints that give us more insight into the areas. So now that we got a little bit of background on the places, let's talk about time. Mark talks about evening and says evening it was dark. And we see in John it says when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea and headed out. So what are we talking about here? Are they again contradicting each other? Well, the Roman military divided the night into 4 watches from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. They were 3-hour watches, 6 to 9, 9 to 12, 12 to 3, 3 to 6. So evening was a 3-hour watch. So no problem at all when they're saying, hey, evening it became dark and they set out evening, that's a 3-hour window. Much like 6 o'clock here is still light and 9 o'clock is getting dark. Again, clarified it, no problem at all. It's really important to understand the time of this because when Jesus comes out later on in our scriptures, we see in Mark, it was the 4th watch, which had been 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. So they weren't out there just for a little bit. They were out there for a good period of time. Well, now that we've got some of the background done, I want to hit kind of our first point. If I'm making a case that Jesus is our guide. And if we see here in John, it says this. It says, verse 17, they got into the boat and started across the sea to Capernaum. It was now dark and Jesus had not yet come to them. Jesus had not yet come to them. See, he was always planning to rejoin them. He was always knowing what they were headed into it, and he hadn't joined them yet. Well, let's get some further clarification over in Mark. Mark 6:48 says this. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Remember, Jesus sent him off. He went away from the people to the mountain top. He's hanging out praying, but he's watching them. He's seeing what they're going. He knew they're going to face storms, but he was looking at them the entire way. He was watching them when they were going through their trouble. So my first point for a case is, don't you want a guide that's looking after you? Don't you want a guide that is looking after you all times and has your best interest at heart? Several years ago, my boss and his wife and my wife got a chance to travel to Saudi Arabia together. And I've been there several times with him, but we were able to bring our wives. And he's a diver. Any divers in the room here? Any divers in the room here? You had a few in the first hour. It's on my bucket list to do. So they went over the Red Sea. It's some beautiful diving. It's basically been not interrupted by a lot of people. So they go diving, and it's him and his wife and a guide. And he noticed about halfway through that his air is going faster than it normally would go. He shows his guide kind of his air thing, and the guy's like, no problem at all, you're fine. So they go on. All of a sudden, he runs out of air. No air, he's gone. Well, he's down below, and any of my divers in the room know this. You can't just go up to the top. You get what's called the bends, which is going to crush your lungs and many times could kill you if you go up too fast. You have to go up, wait, go up, wait. He has no air. He has one choice. He has to go up to the top. Guide is nowhere to be found. He goes up to the top, makes it up in time. His wife comes up behind, kind of, not what's going on. Obviously, you can imagine he's a little bit freaked out. The guy doesn't show up for 10 more minutes. The guy's off on his own, enjoying an adventure there, leaves them to their own. Guy comes up there. You can imagine he's a little bit unhappy with him, and the guy basically blew it off. The guy wasn't looking out for them, did not have his best interest at heart. The guy that we want to have is to have our best interest at heart. Well, let's continue on. Let's pick up in verse 18. It says, the sea became rough because a strong wind was blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were frightened. But he said to them, it is I, do not be afraid. So the second point case I want to make is, don't you want your guide to step off into the chaos with you? Step off into the storm with you? The guy that was my guide in the Lamborghini, he was pretty bold to get in that car. I could have taken that thing 100 miles straight off the track and killed us both. He was right there with me in the car, looking out for me, probably looking out for his car as well, but was guiding me. Don't we want somebody to step into chaos with us? Well, we talk about this strong wind blowing, and I got a couple more pictures here to show you guys. Again, trying to plug for Israel Study Tour here. So if you see these pictures here, coming up, hopefully. All right. There we go. This is the sun coming down. Beautiful ridge there on the Sea of Galilee. Here we go. This is, again, looking around. So one side on a ridge mountain, looking to the other side of a ridge mountain and looking at the beautiful Sea of Galilee. And then this is from the beach looking across from the Gentile side over to the Israelite side of things. Now, if you notice, there's mountain ranges and ridges all around that. Well, what happens when a storm rolls through? See, when a storm comes through here from Noonan to Peachtree City, what does it do? Kind of rolls right through. You can almost see it on the road sometimes. Goes through typically in a couple minutes, and then you're off. Sometimes they stick around for a little bit. Well, because the Sea of Galilee is kind of in a bowl, it's in a valley below it. When a storm comes up over the ridges, it sits. It stays right there for hours upon hours, stirring up the waters. So it's not a quick thing, and they would have known this. If a storm came upon them as they're in the middle of the ocean, they would have known this is going to be around for a while. Now, we see the word rough used here. You can look this up. It means to rise up, to stir up, agitated, right? So the seas was agitated. It was stirred up. But here's another cool meaning. What it also means is to arouse or awaken. We see the same word that's used for the seas to be agitated and rough also in Luke 8:24. And it says this, and they went and woke him, that's saying Jesus, Master, Master, we are perishing. And he awoke and rebuked the wind and the raging waves, and they ceased and there was calm. The same word over here that's using these rough seas is the same word that was used to awaken Jesus to calm the storm. I love how the Bible comes together to show us Jesus wants to come into the storm. He wants to come into the chaos. Now, we see in this, it says they were 3 or 4 miles from where they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles. Now, again, remember, 7 miles across, they're about halfway. So if they turn back, about halfway back, if they go this way, they're there. They're not along the coast. It's dark. We're now approaching into the 3 a.m. in the morning with it there, and they're stuck in the middle. They're rowing in circles. Jesus is seeing that they're struggling. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you're rowing in circles at times? And if you ever felt like you're not going anywhere, you're trying? Anybody just feel like you're stuck and just kind of waking up, going through the days? You can't go anywhere. The storms around you are there. You can't see either side of you. You have no direction what to go. Jesus was watching this. He was understanding what was going on. And what does he do? He steps in to the water. You see Jesus here is walking. And my English majors in here, this is a present active participle. He was on the motion. He was going. And he was going. He was coming towards them. He was approaching them. He was drawing near to them. He was coming close to the boat. Ephesians 2:13 says this, but now in Christ Jesus, you who were once far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. The same word used there in our series in John. The near, he's coming to them in the boat, is the same near that when Christ died brought us closer to him, that we were separated. Now this frightened piece. So like, wait a second. John says, when they saw him, Jesus walk on the sea and coming to the boat, and they were frightened. Well, they see him, so what's going on? Well, let's go back over to Mark real quick here. And Mark says this, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. Matthew also says ghost. So when you look at that, it's a spiritual, appearance or an aberration, which means something remarkable or unthinkable. Yeah, guy walking on water would have classified my book as unremarkable or unthinkable. They saw something coming. They didn't know what it was. It was dark. And here comes Jesus. with them. And what does he say? But he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid. It is I, do not be afraid." Now, Jesus is just brilliant because he just says so few words sometimes. That's not my case. I laugh in elder meetings. I can talk for 20 minutes and Paul can sit there in 2 minutes and 2 sentences summarize what I said in 20 minutes. Jesus just comes right at it and he says, "It is I, do not be afraid." We're going to camp here for a couple minutes. This is a famous Greek translation here called ego ami. Ego ami. Most of the translation we see is I am. And we'll see this in a minute. I'll go back as we see the I ams throughout John, that when it's translated, it's I am. Now we have to go back to the Old Testament to see when this was first used. And the Old Testament is written in Hebrew, but a Greek translation uses the same thing, ego ami. We see in Exodus 3:13 and 3:14, Moses is hanging out. You guys know probably the story. The bush starts to burn, and he's like, "Wait a second, but the bush isn't burning away. I'm going to go check this out." And God's starting to talk to him about releasing his people. And here's what happens. He says to him, Exodus 3:13, Moses said to God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' Then what shall I tell them?" In Exodus 3:14, it says this, God said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. I am who I am." Jesus purposely used these words to identify who he was and answer the question to the disciples that they've been asking. Who is this guy? He's doing these miracles. See, what's beautiful picture about it is the signs were what people wanted, but Jesus wanted to affirm in word who he was. See, they would have known the Torah. They would have known the Old Testament. They would have known God said, "I am who I am." They would have known that. And for Jesus to declare himself, "It is I, do not be afraid," they would have been connected now to his divine connection to the Father. He wasn't just a prophet. He wasn't just a guy doing some cool miracles. He was much more than that. He was connected to the divine Father. First revelation of this. Now we see the I am statements in John. Here's what's really cool. The first I am statement happens after this, not one of them before this. After he revealed himself to the disciples, after he showed them who they were walking with him, they were looking at him as their guide. He revealed who he was to them. They were still obviously trying to figure it out, but we then see the I am statements. Bennett talked about it last week. He said, "I am the bread of life," is John 6:35. "I am the light of the world," John 8:12. "I am the door," John 10:9. "I am the good shepherd," John 10:11 and 14. "I am the resurrection and the life," John 11:25. "I am the way and the truth and the life," John 14:16. "I am the vine," John 15:1-5. The guide that he is to the people in the chaos is connected to the Father, is connected to the vine. He declares over and over again who he is. I was reading through some stuff and I found this article from a pastor in South Carolina, and discipleship, pastor, worship. And I think it's beautiful because sometimes we go to the big names, right? And a lot of people have a lot of good things to say. And he said this in an article. "It is no surprise that social psychology says that actually knowing someone requires personal and private knowledge coming from being with someone over time and building up a level of trust so that they let you in. Knowing about someone is just the first step towards actually knowing them. Thankfully, God has gone to the extreme to make himself known to us. He does this through nature, personal spiritual interactions, and most importantly, the revelation of himself through his son, Jesus Christ, that we get to read about in the Bible." Robert Hampshire. What a beautiful picture. We get to read all these stories of what Jesus has done as he's declared. How's your guide doing? How's your guide stepping into the chaos? If you are your guide, how are you doing? Are you swimming around oars there with it? How's your guide stepping into that chaos? First, you need a guide that looks after you. Secondly, you need somebody that's going to step into life with you. And I think the third key that we look at as we close out our passage here in John 6:21 is I want a guide that leads you to where you need to go. A guide that's going to lead you to where you need to go. We see the end of this in verse 21. "Then they were glad to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land to which they're going." Now, I've read this before, and this is the first time it really caught me. "Then they were glad to take him in the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land to which they were going." Not a hesitation, not an hour later, immediately arrived where they were. I don't know about you guys that have older kids. When I come home now from traveling, they don't run to the door like they were when they were younger, unless they need money. But when I was younger and I traveled, I'd come home, they would come running. They were so glad. They were so excited to see me. They gave me the biggest hug because I was home for them. I just imagine the picture of disciples. They've been out in this ocean for 9 hours, potentially 12 hours, right? They're in the storm. They're challenged with it. They're maybe fearful for their life. And they finally recognize this ghost is Jesus. He declares, "It is I, the person that you've been seeking, the person that you've been reading about there." They gladly welcome into the boat. They take their focus off of their circumstances. They put them on Jesus. And what does he do? He takes them right to where they were going. No hesitation, not at all. This Harmony Bible says this, which is really good. It says, a twofold miracle occurred: the immediate sensation of the wind and the immediate arrival of the boat at its destination. The immediate sensation of the wind and the immediate arrival of the boat at its destination. Now here's one more picture, one more plug. The meeting's afterwards, so please go enjoy it there. This is me hanging out on the Sea of Galilee after a long day of exploring, just chilling and enjoying. I got to imagine when the disciples reached shore, they probably kissed at first, but they're relaxing and seeing, wow, this is what God can do. He took us in the middle of our storm to exactly where we needed to go. He calmed the storms with us. He put us to a place where we are hoping to go. Psalm 107, 29, 30 says this: he stilled the storm to a whisper. The waves of the sea were hushed. They were glad when it grew calm, and he guided them to their desired haven. He grew calm and he guided them. I love, again, the God back in the Old Testament was a guide. He was a guide for the Israelites, and Jesus is our guide. Revelation 21:1 says this: then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. Now, when I first read this, I got to tell you, I was a little bit bummed. I love the beach and the ocean. It's like, oh, no more beach, no more ocean? I mean, I'll be with Jesus, but but it's not that here. It's a figurative speech meaning the chaos. Same word sea here, same word in our passage, but in here it means he's going to calm the chaos. This is right after he binds Satan forever. He's won the victory there. There's no more pain. There's no more sicknesses. New heavens, new earth exists with it there. The chaos is gone. Jesus not only can calm our storms here, not only can guide us to the future, not only can take us to where we need to go, and many times it's even better place than what we can imagine, but he takes us to the ultimate promised land. He leads us to where we need to go in the end. While I was prepping for this, God reminded me of his faithfulness of a story of something that happened years ago. When I was in seminary, I started a recruiting company with my sister. And it was a part-time thing just to kind of pay bills. I was in seminary full-time. And so my schedule typically Monday through Thursday was classes and a lot of work and a lot of reading. And I'm a slow reader, so it was a lot of late nights. But Friday was my day reserved for work. I'd work there, do a little bit during the week, but my sister would take care of most of the stuff during the week. I would work Friday. So we just signed a new client, GE, one of my former places I work at. Big client opportunity, probably double or triple any placement that we made to this point. So this could really help us for several months. So I finished up my class on Thursday, and I'm basically going to say, you know what, I'm going to get a head start on this search because it's so important. And God clearly said, nope, you're going to focus on your work today. You're going to focus on your schoolwork. I'm like, really? Can I start here? Nope, focus on that. I will take care of that for you. Okay, Lord. So I do all my schoolwork that day, go into the evening, finish up there, wake up the next morning expecting a full day of work. If you guys have any done the recruiting or searching, it spends hours just to find a candidate before you interview them, tend to be. I have an email from a former colleague. I open it. It says, hey, Brandon, I've got a colleague I'm working with now that's looking to go to a bigger company. She's a sonographer. Would you be interested? Well, the position that I had just gotten was a sonographer. I was like, huh. But I look at the location. She's in Philly. My position was in Oregon and Washington. And if you don't know the map, that's a long ways away from each other. So I still call her out of courtesy to my friend. I do the conversation with her, do the interview. She's got a lot of the specifications, but I say at the end, hey, I don't have anything for you in Philly. I'm sorry. I've got this opportunity in Oregon and Washington. She said, Brandon, you're not going to believe this. My son is out in that area, and I'm looking to move out to that area. Could not believe it. God had dropped in me the perfect candidate. Fast forward, a lot of crazy things happened. Within a week, she had an offer at a major company. Crazy. I focused on what he called me. He took me immediately to where I needed to be for the other thing. Where is Jesus trying to guide you today that you're afraid of, or honestly, you're just being plain disobedient? Is it a new job? Is it fostering? Is it adoption? Is it maybe surrendering your life fully to him? Serving in the community at church? Opening maybe a new business that's for his kingdom, not necessarily your kingdom? Open up your home? Save your marriage that you're about ready to give up on? Go overseas. Sorry, shameless plug. If you want to serve overseas to people that don't know Jesus. Is he asking you to stop being the guide, your guide, and make him the guide front and center? Are you tired of rowing in circles? Are you tired of living a lap 1 or a lap 2 experience? Or maybe not even on the racetrack? Are you wanting a lap 3 experience? So I hope today I've made my case for Jesus as our guide. And if Jesus is our guide, then there's only one answer that we can give. That we are to always keep our eyes on Jesus, no matter what. If he is our guide, if we make him guide of everything in our life, we're to always keep our eyes on Jesus. Now, some of you in this room right now have never fully surrendered your life to Jesus. You've hold on. He's saying you need to turn over your life and fully surrender to Jesus. Others in this room, you've been a Jesus follower, but now you got one eye kind of closed and one eye looking at him, and you're kind of still doing it yourself. Some of you guys are on a good journey. You're keeping your eyes on Jesus. He just asks you to lean in even more. I don't know where you guys are at here in your journey, but I know each one of us has something that we can apply, I believe, from today. Now, as we close out our time, my hope and prayer is that I've shown you today that the God you want in your life is going to look out for you, that the God is going to step into the chaos, and that the God is going to take you to the promised land, that he's going to take you even beyond what you could imagine. And that answer is Jesus. And let me end with this. Do you want a lap 1 experience, a lap 2 experience, or do you want a lap 3 experience with Jesus? I don't know about you, but I hope and pray I want a lap 3 experience. Let's pray.